Mystery surrounds the disappearance of a schoolboy from Doncaster who hasn't been seen for nearly 2 weeks.
You hope against hope that he is looking after himself in some way. You go round and round in circles thinking, you know, well, probably they've been murdered, maybe they committed suicide, perhaps they're alive and well somewhere. And it might just depend on what day of the week it is. And it is just horrible because in your mind, it is an endless limbo.
It was a crisp September morning in 2007, the kind of morning where the chill in the air hasn't quite shaken off summer's final breath, and life moves with a quiet, rhythmic certainty. In a quiet suburb in Doncaster, South Yorkshire, a 14-year-old boy named Andrew Gosden dressed for school, or at least that's what everyone believed. His school uniform was neatly laid out the night before. His parents, both busy with their routines, had no reason to think this day would be any different than the one before it. But by the end of that afternoon, Andrew wouldn't be in his school classroom. He wouldn't be at home. He wouldn't be anywhere he was expected to be. Instead, he was on a train, alone, headed for London. No one knows why. There were no friends waiting at the other end. No known plans, no packed bag, no note, no digital footprint, just a one-way ticket purchased in cash. And after arriving at King's Cross Station at exactly 11:20 a.m., Andrew Gosden, a quiet, intelligent, gifted teenager, walked off the platform and into complete and utter silence. He has never been seen again. No CCTV, no credible sightings, no phone records, no bank activity, no social media posts, nothing. For over 17 years, Andrew's disappearance has haunted a nation. It's a case that seems so simple on the surface. A boy boards a train and vanishes. And yet the deeper you look, the more disorienting, chilling, and bewildering it becomes. Was this a planned escape, a targeted abduction? Did he run towards something, or was he running from something we never saw? Tonight we go beyond the headlines. We peel back every layer of Andrew's life. His last known movements, the hidden clues, the baffling dead ends, the sudden arrests 15 years later, and the agonizing mystery that continues to consume a family, still waiting, still hoping, and still asking one impossible question. What happened to Andrew Gosden? Andrew Gosden was not your typical teenager. He wasn't rebellious, he wasn't troubled, he wasn't the type of kid who skipped school, lied about where he was going, or acted out for attention. In fact, those who knew him would say he was quiet, studious, almost obsessively intelligent, a straight-A student, mathematically gifted, not just top of his class, the kind of gifted that wins national awards. He preferred to be alone, to stay home, to read, draw, or immerse himself in video games. He wasn't a fan of crowds or loud places. He didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't even seem that interested in social media. He was, in every sense of the word, a safe kid, predictable, reliable, kind. He lived with his parents Kevin and Glenys and his older sister Charlotte in a modest red brick home in the quiet neighborhood of Balby, Doncaster, a typical working-class English family. Kevin was an engineer, Glenys worked in education. They were a close-knit unit, routine-oriented, loving. There was no fighting, no abuse, no signs of instability. From the outside and from the inside, there was simply nothing out of the ordinary. And that's what makes the events of September 14th, 2007 so chilling, because Andrew didn't vanish from a life filled with chaos. He disappeared from calm, from order, from safety. That morning, Andrew got up just like any other school day. His parents had already left for work. As usual, his sister had already left the house. Andrew was alone. He put on his school uniform, or at least gave the appearance that he had, left the house, and walked toward the bus stop. A neighbor saw him en route. Nothing seemed strange, nothing out of character. But Andrew didn't get on the school bus that morning. Instead, somewhere along the way he turned around. He went back home, alone. He removed his school uniform and changed into casual clothes, a Slipknot t-shirt, black jeans, a black hoodie. Then he emptied his bank account, around £200 in cash. He walked to Doncaster railway station, purchased a one-way ticket to London King's Cross, not a return ticket, and boarded the 9:35 a.m. train. He paid in cash, alone. No one accompanied him, and CCTV would later confirm, at 11:20 a.m., Andrew Gosden arrived at King's Cross station in central London, and then, he was gone. What's shocking isn't just that he vanished, it's how calm and calculated the steps leading up to his disappearance were. This wasn't a panicked runaway, this was surgical, precise, and it made no sense. He left behind every item of identification: no phone, no passport, no charger, not even a change of clothes. His PSP was left in his bedroom, his laptop untouched, his bed made, his room clean. There was no note, no final text, no cry for help, no evidence of depression or distress. He simply walked out the door and never walked back in. When school contacted his parents that afternoon to report that Andrew hadn't shown up, confusion quickly turned to panic. Kevin and Glenys were stunned. This was completely out of character. They thought maybe he had been sick, maybe he'd gone to a friend's house, but every call, every lead, every hope, ended in silence. And that night, for the first time in 14 years, Andrew Gosden didn't come home. By morning, his parents were filing a missing persons report. The police began their inquiries, and only then, too late, did the pieces begin to fall into place. CCTV showed Andrew leaving the house, walking toward town. Bank records revealed he had withdrawn his savings, and eventually, a single chilling frame of footage surfaced, a still image from King's Cross Station, time-stamped 11:20, showing Andrew calmly walking through the concourse, backpack over one shoulder, black hoodie zipped halfway. That frame was the last confirmed sighting of him, ever. No CCTV beyond the station showed where he went next. No underground footage, no street footage, no sightings from passers-by. In one of the most monitored cities on Earth, Andrew Gosden simply disappeared into the crowd. This was 2007. Social media wasn't what it is today. There were no iPhones with location tracking. Public CCTV systems weren't networked the way they are now. By the time authorities began tracing his steps in London, more than 24 hours had passed. Cameras had already overwritten their footage. Witness memories were already fading. The window was already closing. And just like that, the search began. Posters, appeals, national news coverage, missing flyers in train stations, on buses, at schools. The Gosden family threw themselves into the search. Kevin took time off work and began combing the streets of London himself, returning day after day with nothing but aching feet and a broken heart. They walked alleyways, talked to strangers, called hospitals, visited shelters. No one had seen Andrew. No one recognized his photo. No one knew anything. It was as if the moment he stepped off that train, Andrew didn't just go missing, he ceased to exist. In the early days of Andrew's disappearance, hope still burned brightly. There was a collective belief, or maybe just a desperate wish, that he would walk through the front door at any moment. Maybe he'd gotten lost. Maybe he'd had a panic attack. Maybe it was a teenage impulse gone too far, and now he was trying to find his way back. There was always a reason, until the silence outlasted every one of them. As days turned into weeks, that silence became deafening. There were no phone calls, no emails, no messages. The £200 in cash Andrew had withdrawn never touched again. No transactions, no CCTV images emerging from ATMs or corner shops. Police worked the case from both ends, combing through every inch of his home life in Doncaster and launching exhaustive efforts to trace him through the busy streets of London. But time was already the enemy. The question burned: why London? Why not Manchester, Leeds, Newcastle, cities closer to home? Why go to London, a place where he didn't know anyone, without any form of contact, and without telling a soul? That mystery became the case's foundation. Every theory, every lead, every guess had to confront one key truth. Andrew went to London. He bought the ticket deliberately, alone. He walked into King's Cross station in the middle of the day, surrounded by thousands of people, and then vanished. Some wondered, was there someone online who had lured him? A stranger he met through gaming, perhaps. But Kevin Gosden was always adamant. Andrew didn't even like talking to people on the internet. His PlayStation was rarely used for online play. There were no chat apps, no suspicious email exchanges. His laptop showed no evidence of secret communication. There was no activity on social media, no burner accounts, no signs of grooming. Others speculated that maybe Andrew had simply chosen to run away. The problem was, that didn't make sense either. He didn't take clothes, he didn't take chargers, he didn't plan for survival. And there were no issues at home. He got along with his family, he wasn't being bullied. There was no history of self-harm, no signs of mental illness, no disciplinary problems at school. Even his friends were dumbfounded. He hadn't said anything unusual, hadn't expressed any distress. One friend recalled that the day before he vanished, Andrew had laughed at a joke he'd told. Nothing had seemed off. The Gosden family were quickly thrust into the harsh, disorienting world of long-term missing persons. They learned the terminology, the protocol, the bitter hierarchy of urgency that police assigned to cases. Kevin and Glenys were faced with two impossible tasks: keep living their lives, and keep searching for their son. They balanced grief and hope with unbearable precision. Their home became a command center. Stacks of missing flyers, maps, notebooks filled with tips and false leads. As the case gained national attention, a parade of psychics, hoaxers, and so-called visionaries came forward, muddying the water with false hope. Some claimed Andrew was alive and well in a commune. Others said he was sleeping rough in London, joining a group of street kids. Every time a new claim surfaced, the Gosdens chased it, and every time it ended in heartbreak. Meanwhile, police were chasing their own leads. There were calls from people who thought they saw Andrew in parks, bus stations, even on the tube. But none of the sightings could be verified. Every CCTV review turned up blank. The city had swallowed him whole. At one point, investigators floated the idea that Andrew may have gone to London to attend an event, a concert perhaps. He was known to like rock and metal bands, Slipknot, Muse, Marilyn Manson. There was speculation that he may have been headed to a gig, but nothing fit. The bands he loved weren't playing that day. And even if they had been, why the secrecy? Why would a shy, introverted teenager lie, vanish, and risk everything just to see a band? Years passed, the flyers weathered and faded, public interest came and went. The case grew colder, and through it all, the Gosden family remained in limbo, unable to grieve, unable to move on, unable to stop searching. Kevin and Glenys became regulars in the missing persons community, campaigning for better resources, better policies, better technology. They never gave up, not once. In the decade that followed, they marked Andrew's birthdays with balloons and tears. They kept his room untouched. They tried to imagine what he'd look like now, how tall he'd be, what kind of man he might have become. And in that endless not knowing, they lived in a kind of purgatory, because not knowing, not having a body, a reason, a goodbye, is the worst kind of suffering. But then in 2021, 14 years after Andrew disappeared, the silence cracked, and everything changed. In September 2021, nearly exactly 14 years to the day since Andrew Gosden vanished, A sudden and completely unexpected development hit the headlines. 2 men had been arrested in connection with Andrew's disappearance. The news came like a thunderclap, not just for the family, but for everyone who had followed the case for years. For the first time in over a decade, there was movement, real movement. Not a theory, not a sighting, not a psychic vision, actual suspects. And not just for questioning, the charges were serious. One man, 45 years old, was arrested on suspicion of kidnapping and human trafficking. The other, aged 38, was taken in on suspicion of possessing indecent images of children. This was not the twist anyone expected. South Yorkshire Police didn't release many details. In fact, they were careful, too careful. The press release was short, deliberate, clinical. They did confirm that both men were from London, and that their arrests had come as a result of ongoing investigations, including digital forensic work and re-interviews. What they didn't say was even more telling. They didn't confirm whether Andrew had ever met these men. They didn't reveal if the two were connected to each other. They didn't clarify whether the charges stemmed from evidence directly linked to Andrew, or something found during unrelated investigations. The public was left reeling. For 14 years, Andrew had been a ghost, no trace, no leads. Now suddenly, the possibility of abduction and exploitation was not only real, it was staring everyone in the face. And yet, even with these arrests, the case didn't explode the way it should have. There was no dramatic press conference, no emotional family statement broadcast live. The media covered it, yes, but cautiously, almost quietly. It was as if no one dared to hope too hard, in case it all crumbled again, and it did. A few months after the arrests, the 2 men were released under investigation, not charged. No new statements, no confirmation of wrongdoing. Just nothing. The trail once again went cold. And for the Gosden family, the agony of maybe had returned with a vengeance. Imagine what that's like, hearing that 2 people may have had something to do with your son's disappearance, only to watch them walk away. No answers, no resolution, just questions piling up on top of old ones. Was Andrew abducted after all? Did he meet someone online and was lured under false pretenses? Was he alive longer than anyone realized? Or the most horrifying possibility, had he died the same day he disappeared, and these men were part of the cover-up? Police refused to release further details, citing the sensitivity of the investigation. They confirmed that digital devices had been seized and examined. They confirmed that no body had been found. But beyond that, it was back to silence. For Kevin Gosden, it was another emotional whiplash, a glimmer of something that looked like progress, only to be buried again beneath procedure and secrecy. The truth is, Andrew's case isn't just one mystery, it's 3. First, why did he go to London? Second, what happened after he arrived? And third, the darkest of all, did someone already know what was going to happen before that train ever left Doncaster? These questions have haunted the investigation. Every lead has bent under their weight, and in the absence of answers, speculation has become both a lifeline and a curse. Online forums have dissected Andrew's behavior endlessly. People have built entire theories around the idea that he may have gone to meet someone from an underground scene, perhaps the goth or metal community. Some claim he could have been lured by a group who targeted teenagers online with promises of adventure or freedom. Others point to the deliberate nature of his disappearance, the casual way he bought a one-way ticket, his choice to leave everything behind, as signs that he may have been acting out a plan. But what plan? And why would a boy with no history of rebellion, no mental health struggles, and a close relationship with his family suddenly walk into the heart of London without a trace? Others believe the simplest answer may be the truth, that something happened to Andrew within hours of arriving at King's Cross, that he met the wrong person, took a wrong turn, trusted someone he shouldn't have, and that whatever happened to him, happened fast. One of the most heartbreaking aspects of this story is that we don't know if Andrew ever even left the station. It's entirely possible that he walked out into the city, confused, unsure and vulnerable, and was targeted within minutes. And because there was no one waiting for him, no one watching for him, no one expecting him to arrive, no alarm was raised until it was too late. King's Cross in 2007 was busy, chaotic. Parts of it were under renovation. The area just outside the station was rougher then, known for drug deals and street crime. And yet in a place with so many cameras, so many people, and so much surveillance, Andrew vanished like smoke. As the years stretched on, the silence surrounding Andrew's disappearance grew heavier, not just for the family, but for the public. For anyone who had ever walked into King's Cross and wondered just for a second if they'd passed him. If one of those faces in the crowd had been his, aged and reshaped by time, but still carrying the same intensity in his eyes. There's something about the passage of time in missing persons cases. It begins as a race, a surge of energy. Police launch into action, media outlets light up, posters go up overnight, but slowly, the search becomes a marathon. No one trained for. Tips grow colder, volunteers drop away, news crews pack up, and the silence grows thick with hopelessness. But for the Gosdens, giving up was never an option. Kevin and Glenys refused to let their son's story fade. They appeared on national television. They gave interviews, spoke at missing persons events, pushed for wider reforms in how authorities treat teenage disappearances. They advocated for the use of facial age progression software to help generate realistic images of what Andrew might look like today. And every year they marked the anniversary of his disappearance with renewed urgency, reminding the world that this story wasn't over, that Andrew wasn't just a case number. He was a son, a brother, a bright, brilliant boy whose life had been stolen by silence. But there was a cost. Kevin once described living with Andrew's disappearance as like being trapped in a glass box underwater, screaming, and no one can hear you. Over the years he suffered from severe mental health struggles. The stress, grief, and uncertainty eroded the family's normalcy. Andrew's sister Charlotte, only 10 when he vanished, grew up in the shadow of the void he left behind. Her childhood was shaped by missing person flyers and unanswered questions. She later said in interviews that Andrew's disappearance felt like living with a wound that never heals. The case became more than a mystery. It became a haunting, and still, no one came forward. Not one person has ever definitively said they saw Andrew after he stepped off that train. Not a single confirmed sighting, not a single message, not a single trace of life. For someone to vanish so completely, in a city crawling with surveillance and technology, is unthinkable. But that's exactly what happened. As investigators revisited the case over the years, they re-examined every shred of evidence. The CCTV footage was analyzed again and again. The ticket transaction was reviewed. The train staff were interviewed. There were calls to extend the search internationally. Could Andrew have somehow left the UK, but his passport was at home? He'd taken no identification. His bank account remained untouched for years. There were no online footprints, nothing to track, nothing to follow. This wasn't just a cold case, it was a perfect void. Even with the advent of new technology, facial recognition, improved CCTV, AI-based search, Andrew's trail remained stubbornly frozen in 2007. And yet, hope never died. Because every so often, a story would break. A boy found in Europe with amnesia. A young man living off-grid in a remote town. A cold case cracked decades later by a fluke DNA match. And each time, for a split second, the Gosdens held their breath. Could this be it? Could this be Andrew? But each time, it wasn't. And that's what makes this story so brutal. Not just the disappearance itself, but the endless cycle of hope and heartbreak that followed, the not knowing. the theories, the silence. One of the most chilling things about the Andrew Gosden case is how it forces us to confront the illusion of safety. That a smart, responsible, well-loved boy can walk out of a house, board a train in broad daylight, and never be seen again. It shakes something in all of us, because if it can happen to Andrew, it can happen to anyone. And the deeper you look, the more you realize this isn't just the story of one missing teenager. It's a mirror held up to society. It reflects our systems, our assumptions, our failures. It shows how easy it is to fall through the cracks, how even with the best efforts, the strongest families, the most cooperative police forces, sometimes the darkness wins. But that's not the end, because what keeps this case alive, what keeps people searching, is the sheer impossibility of it all. The idea that somewhere, somehow, Andrew might still be out there, that there's still a thread left to pull, that there's someone who knows the truth and is just waiting for the right moment or the right reason to come forward. And if that day comes, everything will change. In the years that followed, as the case of Andrew Gosden continued to haunt investigators and the public alike, it became something more than a mystery. It became a warning. Parents across the country whispered his name like a cautionary tale. Online forums analyzed his every step, every detail of his last known movements. His disappearance wasn't just baffling, it felt surgical, clinical, like someone knew exactly how to make a 14-year-old boy vanish without a trace. It was the kind of story that makes you check your locks twice, that makes you hold your children closer, that keeps you awake at night, staring at the ceiling, asking the question no one could answer. How does a boy disappear in plain sight? It wasn't just the act of vanishing that disturbed people, it was the precision of it. The cold, quiet, intentional way Andrew withdrew from his own life. He emptied his bank account, left his phone, told no one, bought a one-way ticket to London, and walked away, and then nothing. To some, that sounded like a plan, but to others, it felt like a setup, like someone had coached him, or manipulated him, or worse, forced him. That maybe the decisions weren't really his at all. One chilling theory that investigators couldn't shake was the possibility of online grooming, that someone somewhere behind a screen had gotten into Andrew's head, had spoken to him at night when the rest of the house was asleep, had offered him excitement, freedom, understanding, a version of the world beyond the classroom, beyond the textbooks, beyond the routine of school uniforms and exam pressure. To a boy like Andrew, brilliant, introverted, and craving depth, that kind of promise could be intoxicating and deadly. Kevin Gosden himself admitted that possibility had kept him up for years. The idea that Andrew had been targeted, chosen, that the person or people responsible for his disappearance had seen something in his son and exploited it. But the investigation into Andrew's digital life didn't yield much. Authorities searched the family computers, checked email accounts, dug into internet history, but there was no trace. No evidence of online conversations, no message boards, no suspicious connections. Then again, Andrew hadn't used the family computer often, and he didn't have his own. Which raises a question few people want to ask out loud. What if Andrew was talking to someone in person? What if the real danger wasn't in cyberspace, but right there, in his daily life? A teacher, a neighbor, someone he saw on the way home from school, a stranger at the park, someone who knew his habits, someone who earned his trust. Because when you look at the calculated nature of his disappearance, the quiet, methodical way he slipped out of Doncaster, it doesn't look like the move of a runaway. It looks like a meeting. He didn't wander, he didn't panic, he didn't hesitate. He was going somewhere. And that's where the horror creeps in. Because if he was meeting someone, who were they? And what were they planning? Andrew was last seen at 11:25 a.m. on September 14, 2007. The CCTV image captures him walking out of King's Cross Station. He's wearing a Slipknot t-shirt, black jeans and black trainers. He's alone. He doesn't look lost, he doesn't look scared, but he does look young. 14, alone, in London. It's hard to imagine he lasted long without someone noticing, and yet, no one did. Not the police, not the thousands of commuters brushing past him that day, not the shopkeepers, the security guards, the CCTV operators, no one. The question that's hung over this case for years is simple: what happened next? Did he get in a car? Did someone approach him at the station? Did he walk into an alleyway and never come out? Or was he lured into a flat, a building, a place where no cameras could see? Theories abound. Some say he was kidnapped for trafficking. Others suggest he took his own life somewhere out of sight. Still others argue he may have been recruited, radicalized even into something dangerous. But all of it is speculation. There is no evidence, no confirmed sighting, no message, no remains, just a void. And within that void, something even more terrifying. The idea that whoever was responsible for Andrew's disappearance might still be out there, living quietly, hiding in plain sight, carrying the knowledge that they erased a child and got away with it. And if that's true, how many others are out there? How many other children have vanished under similar circumstances? Because the truth is, Andrew Gosden is not alone. Every year, thousands of children go missing in the UK. Some are found, many are not, and too many of their stories are ignored, buried under statistics and red tape. But Andrew's case forced the public to look closer, to ask harder questions, to demand better answers. Because if a boy like Andrew, bright, loved and full of potential, can disappear without a trace, then the system isn't broken. It's worse, it's blind. Years passed. The seasons changed, buildings went up, faces grew older, and still no sign of Andrew Gosden. His story was no longer just a cold case. It had become something colder. A ghost embedded in the architecture of Britain's missing, a face on the wall, a name spoken in hushed tones, a tragedy frozen in time. Then, in 2021, something happened. A sudden ripple in the silence. 2 men were arrested in connection with Andrew's disappearance. 14 years after he vanished, the South Yorkshire Police announced they had detained a 38-year-old and a 45-year-old on suspicion of kidnapping and human trafficking. Devices were seized. Evidence was being processed. For a moment it felt like hope, like movement, like maybe, just maybe, this wasn't a dead end after all. But then, nothing. No charges, no public statements, no details. The arrests were made, the world held its breath, and the silence resumed. It was a gut punch, not just to the Gosdens, but to every single person who had followed this case. It felt like the system had peered behind the curtain and refused to tell the rest of us what it saw. Why? Was it a lack of evidence, a legal technicality, or was it something darker, something too dangerous, too complex, or too embarrassing to expose? No one knows. And in that vacuum of information, the speculation surged again. Who were these men? Why now? What led police to them? After all this time, could Andrew still be alive? Or had justice come 14 years too late? Kevin and Glenys, as always, handled it with strength and dignity. They expressed gratitude to the police, to the public, to everyone who still cared. But the pain was undeniable. After nearly a decade and a half of not knowing, to come that close to answers, only to be left hanging again, was almost unbearable. Still, they didn't give up, because they can't. Because behind every news headline, behind every theory, behind every police statement, there is something far more human. A family, a boy, a life cut short, or stolen, or lost in a way that defies understanding. Andrew's bedroom remains untouched, his belongings still neatly arranged, a silent monument to the boy who left one morning and never came home. His father has said he still walks past Andrew's room, pauses and waits, just in case, because even now, after all this time, there's still a door in their hearts that's not shut. And until they know what happened, It never will be. There are moments when the silence feels cruel, when the not knowing feels like a punishment worse than truth. But in that silence, there's also something powerful, a refusal to forget. And that refusal is why this story still matters. Because Andrew Gosden is not just another face on a poster, he is a reminder of how fragile safety really is, of how a single decision, a single step, a single moment can unravel an entire life. A reminder that beneath the routines and distractions of daily life, darkness still lurks, but also that hope endures. And maybe, just maybe, so does Andrew. If this story moved you, if Andrew's disappearance rattled something inside you, don't let it end here. Share his story, keep the conversation alive. Someone, somewhere, knows something. And if you're new here, this is what we do. We shine a light on the missing, the silenced, the forgotten. Every week, we dive into the darkest corners of true crime, and we do it with respect, compassion, and relentless truth. So if you believe these stories deserve to be told, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, join our community of seekers, survivors, and storytellers. Because together, we don't just watch the darkness, we push back against it. Until next time, stay safe, stay sharp, and never stop asking questions.